when we talk about poetry, what do you think about? Like if I say, we're going to read some poetry today, what's the first thing that springs to mind? Kaylee?
Fancy wording and very descriptive words.
Fancy words. Now let's stick with fancy.
Okay.
It's more fun. Fancy words. What else? Shakespeare. What else? Rhyming. That is important. Rhyme. Meter. Very good. Pattern. Ooh.
Stanzas.
Nice stanzas. So except for this one, all of these other words that you've picked out all relate to what? We think about Mrs. Smith's tripartite, I don't know, critical method, really, lowercase c, literary critical method. The form, idea, and beauty, right? What's it look like? What's it about? And what's pretty about it? All of these words have to do with which one of these? Beauty. Form. How the poem looks, how it's arranged, its form. Right? Is it 4 stanzas of 4 lines with an alternating rhyme scheme? That's a formal description. You're describing its form. What about idea? What words, if we're thinking about what the idea of a poem is, what words are we going to choose? Okay, so meaning. Tropes. Okay.
Like
Emotion.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, interesting.
kind of like emotion, but like
Well, you could say maybe expression, right? Because you're expressing something, usually love or sadness at over you love not loving you back. So expressing your emotions.
Plot.
What?
Plot.
Plot. Okay, yeah. What it's about. And we could say narrative along with that. A theme would go with it. What is the theme of the poem? When we talk about ideas, are we talking about big ideas, small ideas, medium-sized ideas? What are poems usually about? Turn to the poem from Spenser, Immoreti 75. Look at the last 4 lines. My verse, your virtues rare shall eternize, and in the heavens write your glorious name. Where when as death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live, and later life renew. So he's going to take their love, so his poem about their love is going to make their love eternal and write it in the stars. And then, at the heat death of the universe, life will be restarted through the power of their love. Is this a big thing or a small thing? A big thing. Very good. So we're talking about big ideas. And even when the subject may be a small idea, it's usually being used to talk about something big, right? If you look at, actually, I can show you this one. Don't mind me. Let's see.
We write on these words down.
I don't know. So it loads. Okay, so this is a great poem. The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens.
How do you write about this?
Yeah, it's a good poem. This is about something very small, right? It's a wheelbarrow and a couple feet around it where there are some chickens and it has been raining. Something very small. But do you think Williams is trying to express something small or something big? Big. Now, what that is, talk about, we don't have really time to get into it, but it is, even when you take something small, something inconsequential, right? John Donne writes a poem addressed to a louse, right? Louse is singular of lice. One teeny itty bitty bug he talks to. Or Robert Burns to a mouse. Talking to a field mouse. A little mousy. So even when the subject is something small, in both of these, both from Donne and from Burns and Williams here, they're using it to express something big, right? So poetry is generally about big ideas, wanting to express a big idea in some way. Okay? Beauty. What is beauty? Proportion and form, right? Kind of the classical definition. But you'll learn what beauty is more at the end of your senior year when you do aesthetics and GI. But here, when we're talking about in terms of interpreting a poem, when we're talking about beauty, what are we talking about? When you say something, you can pull your mask down.
Figurative language.
Okay, figurative language. What is figurative language? What is figurative language? Yeah.
You're saying something which means something else, and you're like metaphorical.
Okay, so a metaphor. Got me some of those paper towels real quick.
It's like it's so more than just like not like one word is a metaphor. It's like the whole entire poem. The whole entire poem is like a allegory for something else.
Okay, so we can talk about allegory. But when we're talking about metaphor, aren't we really talking about idea? Because it's using one thing to describe another thing. So wouldn't it be more idea? Yes or no? Agree or disagree with me? Come on, someone be brave. Okay. But can, say, a metaphor be beautiful? Can you tell me a metaphor that you find beautiful?
I was going to say the GI, the cave.
That's beautiful to you?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
I was gonna say, it doesn't, you're not talking about like the beauty of the metaphor, so it's the language you use. Like,
All right, so it has something to do with the language part more than the figurative part? Okay, interesting.
The idea could be beautiful, but if it's written plain and bland, then it's not as descriptive and as beautiful as it would be with creative writing and yeah.
that's what I was trying to say.
Okay, so it is something more than the idea being expressed. It's something about the words themselves and their interaction that can make a beautiful poem. All right, like this poem, I find beautiful. I love this poem. I'm obsessed with this poem. I have been for years. And it's because I can't quite figure out what exactly he's trying to say, right? This is hard.
That's kind of unrelated, but the metaphor can be beautiful. It could put beautiful image in your mind.
Yeah, and that's also part of it. What is the metaphor being presented to you? Is that image beautiful in and of itself? And then is it being expressed beautifully, plainly? Can something being expressed plainly still be beautiful? Right? We have all these questions, all of these interactions. That's the great thing is all three of these, form, idea, and beauty, they interact. And that's what makes a good poem good, is good interaction between all these things. Question?
Didn't answer your question. So I think it makes it more beautiful because, like you said, you don't fully understand the poem, but that's like sort of on purpose because it's a lot more interesting than just saying, just flat out saying whatever they really want it to mean. But if they use figurative language, then it's more interesting to the reader, and they actually spend time trying to figure it out. And there's also like multiple ways.
Right, but don't you ever just like give up on a poem because it's too hard? Yeah.
Can a poem have energy? Whether it's the words written or
It's a good question. What do you think?
people read things differently, so what does that mean?
Well, it depends on how you, the reader, are affected by it, what you think about it. But also, I mean, the poem itself, right? So if you read this poem, right, you read it slowly, thoughtfully, so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow blazed with rainwater beside the white chicken. So even seeing it in those 4 stanzas, right, each one 4 words long, but the first line being 3 words, second line being 1 word, and that split is how it's set up, makes you read it more slowly. But if you read this poem, right? How would you read this? The Assyrian came down like a wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. Right?
It's got rhyme.
It's that rhythm. It does rhyme.
Yeah.
It does rhyme, but the meter itself, it sounds like a horse galloping, right? That's describing a cavalry charge. So but it speeds you up as you read it. Right? So I would say that this poem, The Destruction of Sennacherib by Lord Byron, has a much different energy than The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. Right, and then even beyond that, you can have, Red Wheelbarrow is thoughtful. This one is, what would you say? It is, it's martial, right? It's warlike. If you read something like The World is Too Much With Us by Wordsworth, William Wordsworth, it's polemical, right? He's expressing his frustration and saying where everyone is wrong. And it's angry. It's a good poem to yell. Actually, it's a lot of fun to just yell, especially because in the middle of it, there's an exclamation of "Great God!" He's just infuriated at the world. Then you could read. I don't know. So you're right. Poems have different energies, and the energy is partly what you bring to the table and partly what the poem brings to the table. Right? Does that make sense? Right. Very good. Any other questions? Okay, let us. Where the heck is my mouse? There it is. Okay. Can you see the board, Alec? Ish. All right. Let's talk about sonnets. So you all have your handout, right? So what is the most basic definition of a sonnet? Carter?
It's a poem.
Yep.
Mainly 14 lines long.
Yep.
In iambic pentameter, and it's used to write love.
Is the subject always love?
No, but mainly.
Especially at the beginning, it was
Yeah,
all love poems, but not so much anymore.
14th century, it was used to write love poems.
Yep.
And one of the most well-known was.
Yes, he is the best English sonneteer. That is, he perfected the English sonnet. But basically, it's a 14-line poem written in iambic pentameter. What is iambic pentameter? It's a type of meter. Stress, stress, brev, brev, stress. Hirschberger?
Brev, stress.
I am. That's the trick with different types of meters. The name of it is the meter, right? So it is brev stress or unstressed syllable, stress syllable, and then pentameter. There are 5 feet in a line. So you will have 5 brev stresses. Now, one thing for sonnets, the first foot of the first line will be reversed because who wants to start their poem on a downbeat? But other than that, it will usually just be straight iambic, right? Unless someone throws something in to highlight something.
The whole poem, like just
A whole poem. The whole poem will be iambic pentameter.
and then like you only stress the very first syllable.
No, so when we talk about meter for a poem, let's look at an example. If you look at Whoso Lists to Hunt by Wyatt, Sir Thomas Wyatt. Whoso lists to hunt, I know where is an hind, but as for me, alas, I may no more. The vain travail hath wearied me so sore, I am of them that farthest cometh behind. So if you look, there are, so each line will have 10 syllables, right? And those syllables will be in this pattern, unstressed syllable, stressed syllable. and they're in pairs. And so that would be a foot. It would be an iambic foot.
First line.
Well, there is, Wyatt is throwing in trochees into this. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. Trochees are a different type. We're not trochees. I don't know.
Is this iambic pentameter?
Yes, it will generally be iambic pentameter. Some people play with it. So when we're talking about a foot, we're talking about that set of syllables that make up whatever meter it is. So that's the meter of a sonnet, right? What is the rhyme scheme? What should you now ask? Carter?
Wait, what did you say? You said, what should you now ask?
Yeah, Wes, what's the rhyme scheme of a sonnet? You're going to ask?
The octave or the sextet?
Not quite. Not all sonnets have an octave. Just what type of sonnet, right? So, for a Petrarchan sonnet, or an Italian sonnet, what is the rhyme scheme? What's the rhyme scheme for the octave?
A,
Let's
B,
go.
B, A, B, B, A.
All right, A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A. Now, this is the octave. It's the first 8 lines. Right? Like in music, an octave is 8 notes. And then the octave is made up of 2. Let's put it on the other side. It is made up of 2 4-line sections, which are called what? Quatrains. Right? And so then you have 8 lines here. So how many lines do you have left? It's a 14-line poem. 6. So what's the rhyme scheme of the sestet? There are 2 variations for a Petrarchan. It's one of
Either
them.
CDE, CDE, or
I asked for one. What's the other one? Ryan, what's the other one? The sestet. That's right. So this is the sestet. And what comes between the octave and the sestet? The turn or the volta. Turn. And the volta does different things in different types of sonnets, but generally sonnets, most sonnets will have a volta in there somewhere, depending on the form. If you're looking at kind of the classical versions of sonnets, it will be either in between the octave or the sestet, or it'll be before the last 2 lines, the ending couplet. Kind of more modern sonnet forms, it can be different places because they play with the rhyme scheme. Questions so far?
So what would be an example of a volta?
We'll get there. 1050, is that right? On combo days for first block? Right? Okay. Yeah, because 1005 plus 45.
so
Question.
sonnets in the octave. Does are the first 2 quatrains always the same? Like, is there-
If it's a Petrarchan sonnet, yes, they will. It will be. They'll have the same rhyme schemes. We'll get there. In a Petrarchan sonnet, they're going to have the same. Now, is this split just for funsies? No, Jaylee, you said no. Why?
That's how they wrote it.
What is the octave used to present? Skylar?
It's like used to present a problem or desire, so the whole seven turns of that and the rest of it.
Yeah, so the octave presents a problem or a desire. And the quatrains are two different perspectives on it. Right?
Well, the octave presents what or desire?
Yeah, so your first 8 lines are you're going to say, hey, here's a problem. And your quatrains are going to give two different perspectives on that problem. So if we look at whoso lists to hunt again, whoso lists to hunt, I know where is an hind, but as for me, alas, I may no more. The vain travail hath wearied me so sore, I am of them that farthest cometh behind. Yet may I by no means my wearied mind draw from the deer, but as she fleeth afore, fainting I follow. I leave off, therefore, since in a net I seek to hold the wind. So that's the octave. So what is being presented? There is a general problem being presented. Okay, he's trying to catch the deer, right? And so the more specific perspective on that problem in the first quatrain, what is it? He can't catch it, and there's a whole bunch of people trying to catch the deer, and he's last. Everyone's before him, right? They're all chasing the deer, and he's the last one. And then, in the second quatrain, what perspective is he giving? Yeah, even if he could get close, it'd be like trying to catch the wind in a net. Can you catch the wind in a net? No. Always gets away, right? And he's really tired. Right? He's fainting as he chases the deer. So he's pursuing his quarry and his prey, and yet he cannot catch her. Because there are other hunters that are going to catch her first. And even if he could be the one that makes the attempt, it would be like trying to catch the wind. Right? So that's the problem. Now, do you think the deer might be a metaphor for something? No, it's just a normal deer, right? But, Carter, in between the octave and the sestet is a what? A volta. Volta meaning turn. This is where, in a Petrarchan sonnet, you shift from a presentation of the problem to a presentation of the solution, if it's a problem being presented. Or it is a broader comment. Maybe it's not as big of a problem. Or maybe you need to consider it in this perspective. But it is generally a response to what's presented in the octave. Okay? So, looking at whoso lists to hunt again. So whoso lists to hunt, whoever wants to hunt. Right? So now, who lists her hunt, I put him out of doubt, as well as I may spend his time in vain. Engraven with diamonds and letters plain, there is written, her fair neck round about, noli me tangere, for Caesar's I am, and wild for to hold, though I seem tame. So we have the turn. And what is the turn towards? So what's he saying in the last 6 lines? Well, even if you could catch her, What's the problem? She belongs to Caesar. What's noli me tangere? All you Latin scholars. Yeah, touch me not. So, supposedly, Caesar, so if you look at the Petrarchan, 1 Rima 190, is that what it is? Yeah, which Wyatt, so the first English sonneteers, Wyatt goes to Italy, visits Italy, is introduced to the sonnet form. And he's like, hey, this is real neat. And he brings it back to England. And he's buddies with this guy, Henry Howard. And so they like poetry and they're like, hey, let's do this too. So the first 10 or 15 years, the sonnet form is in England. Really all they are doing is imitating Italian sonnets. So like here, Whoso Lists to Hunt is an adaptation of Petrarch's Rima 190, which is on this page, right? Now, both of them using this image of a deer with a collar made of gold and with diamonds on it, with the phrase, touch me not, is a reference to, supposedly, Julius Caesar had a forest in which he had every deer caught, collared, and the collars were made of gold and said, touch me not, because they were his deer, right? And if you went and killed them, you were poaching. So that's the reference, right? So it is belonging to, someone important, a lord, a king, what have you. Okay. So Wyatt here, and this last one is saying, look, even if you could catch this deer that you or that I and everyone else loves so much and desires so much, even if you could catch them, what's the problem? Can't keep them. And what do you think Caesar would do to someone who took one of his deer? It would end poorly, let's say, right? So while it's not a solution to the problem of catching this deer, it is a resolution to the issue, because why even try now? Because you're just going to get killed if you succeed, right? Now, again, I asked the question, is the deer actually a deer? No, of course not. It's a poem copied off of an Italian sonnet. It's about a girl. It's always about a girl, okay? When in doubt, it's about a girl. So, right, pursuing a young lady, madly in love with this young lady. There are a bunch of other dudes trying to get after her. Come to find out, she's promised to another. Oh, the heartbreak. Sadness, pain, and torment. So, questions on either Whoso Lists to Hunt or what a Petrarchan sonnet is. All right, we're solid. Brian, you have a question? Now we're going to begin the year-long event of me accidentally stealing Mr. Monroe's markers and sticking them in my pocket. Okay, no questions on this. Alec, you have any questions? Okay, what is the second type of sonnet? Yeah, Shakespearean sonnet. That's misspelled.
Same thing as the English sonnet.
So I forgot I made this PowerPoint. So, okay, Shakespearean or English sonnet? So even though Petrarch didn't invent the Petrarchan, or didn't invent the sonnet or the Italian sonnet form, he perfected it. So it's called the Petrarchan sonnet. Similarly, for Shakespeare, he did not invent the English sonnet form, but really he perfects it. If you read his sonnets, he's got 146, I think. 146. It's quite a lot of sonnets, and a lot of them are really. You will recognize a lot of lines out of them that you won't even know are from Shakespeare. They're in our vocabulary as we talk. So the English sonnet was first kind of developed by Henry Howard, the Earl of Surrey. He's generally called just Surrey, so if I call him Surrey, that's where that's coming from. And he kind of innovated it after Wyatt brought the sonnet form to England, and and after a while they got kind of bored at just imitating the Italians because they're Italians. They started playing with it, and they started messing around with it, and Howard ended up hitting on the English sonnet form. So like all sonnets, it is 14 lines in iambic pentameter, but what's different is the structure. So what is the rhyme scheme of an English sonnet? Jacob. That's right, very good. So ABAB is the first what? Quatrain. CDCD is the second quatrain. EFEF is the third quatrain. And then GG is a couplet, and it's a special type of couplet called what? A heroic couplet. Now, the difference between a heroic couplet and a just regular old couplet is that the rhyme of a heroic couplet it's a full rhyme, right? So it will be a perfect rhyme on that last syllable, right? And usually it's got a big gung-ho feel to it. When we read Shakespeare's plays, we see a lot of heroic couplets to end soliloquies, which we will discuss more here in a couple of weeks. So, again, the question, is this just for funsies? The rhyme scheme? No! Skylar, why do you say that?
I say that because it has meaning.
Right. What is that meaning? So what is oppressed? What is expressed in the first quatrain? So we're talking content-wise. Each quatrain of the sonnet develops a specific idea or example, right? Yeah. But each quatrain, or all three, relate to an overarching concept. So the idea is you've got a big idea being talked about in the poem, right? So let's put that right here. And each quatrain will present a different side of that big idea. All right, so it's an idea, it's a problem, whatever it may be. You're not told outright what it is, but you're given three perspectives on it, so then you can understand what the problem is. We'll talk about this more next class when we read Shakespeare's sonnets, or when you will have read Shakespeare's sonnets. Because Shakespeare does this really well. And then the heroic couplet, what does the heroic couplet do?
Provides a strong and quick send-off.
Yeah. It finishes with emphasis on something, right? Like all heroic couplets, it's a big fist pumping thing. And so it'll resolve, or it'll bring it all together and be like, and so, aha! And then it's off you go, right? Now, this is where the volta will be placed before the couplet. This is a fun thing about the English sonnet, is it's much more malleable or variable. So the volta can go before the couplet, and that is when you're going to have that finish with emphasis. If the volta is placed here, so it looks like you have, so it's where you will have kind of an octave and a sestet being played around, the third quatrain will present an opposing view or a resolution to the first two quatrains, right? And so the heroic couplet, it is it's serving a similar function, but it is emphasizing the third quatrain instead of whatever the big idea being presented. Okay. So for both of these, why are we talking about how the content of the quatrains interact? Why would we do that? It changes the meaning. It's also going to help you do what? Understand what's going on. Figure out what's being said. How does what's in the first quatrain relate to the second quatrain? Where's the volta? All of these things are tools that help us better interpret sonnets, which is important because the sonnet form was the primary form for, see, if you're going 1600 to, you can say 1900, 300 years. So it's important to have it down. Now, quickly, some questions on this. Okay, so we can.
Why is it called heroic?
Well, a heroic couplet is, it's really, it's about the feel. So it is a full rhyme at the end of the couplet, or it's a full rhyme at the end of the lines. So like here, so I mean, this one's kind of cheating because of how Wyatt wrote it. But this is the sweet season, or this is Surrey. And so things and springs, those are full rhymes, right? They're just and so right, that's a technical term. And so it'd be a heroic couplet. Now, if you want to get right, and it's not just the last sound of this. It's not even the last two sounds of the ms, right? It's the vowel and then the last couple consonants. So it's a big full rhyme, right? Right, you know the difference between a full rhyme and a half rhyme? All right, where a half rhyme or a slant rhyme, it sort of rhymes, but not quite. There wouldn't be any in there. Yep, yeah. They became really popular kind of in the early to mid 1900s. It started getting used a lot. Mainly because for a while it was seen as cheating. You're using slant rhymes, like we'll come up with a better word. Okay. So, all right, so the sweet season, yeah. Small. Here's a. So here it would be. Here's an example of a slant rhyme, actually. So small. Well, let's look. So what's the rhyme scheme of this poem? Actually, let's read it first. It's a good question. The sweet season that bud and bloom forth brings, with green hath clad the hill and eke the vale. The nightingale with feathers new she sings, and turtle to her make hath told her tale. Summer is come, for every spray now springs. The hart hath hung his old head on the pail. The buck in brake his winter coat he flings. The fishes fleet with new repaired scale. The adder all her sloth away she slings. The swift swallow pursueth the flies small. The busy bee her honey now she mings. Winter is worn that was the flower's veil. And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. So, what is our rhyme scheme? This one's kind of cheating to give you as an example of an English sonnet because he's playing with it. What's the example? What's the rhyme scheme that you see? Yeah, for this poem.
I would say and so
Right, because the couplet is AA. Right, there's a heroic couplet. Right, but it's A B A B A B A B A C A B A A. Now, here's something when we're interpreting poems. One, this is written in Elizabethan English, so or early modern English. So it is still modern English, which is what we speak, but it's kind of an archaic form of modern English. No one really speaks it anymore today. The closest modern speakers to Elizabethan English are people that live in like the deep woods, Appalachia, because they moved there during the Elizabethan period and never left. Don't talk to anyone else, so they've cut their accent.
Wait, so like East Coast? Not
Appalachia, where the Appalachian Mountains are, so Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, that kind of stuff, where my family is from. Mountain people, hillbillies, rednecks. They're good people. So, is this about this?
Yes.
Okay,
What the heck is
we'll get there.
the second line?
So, the question is small really all by itself? Maybe. It would be all by itself if it made sense that Surrey wanted us to pay a lot of attention to it. Right? So, one of the things good poets do is they put in, you could call it a mistake, but they put in something that throws off the meter or throws off the rhyme to draw attention to it because they want to emphasize it. So, do you think that Surrey wants to emphasize that line, the swift swallow pursueth the flies small? Why not? I can't tell who's talking.
It doesn't really seem that important compared to the other ones.
Yeah, because what's going on? It's just a bunch of examples of animals doing animal stuff. Why is this one important? I mean, swallows are nice birds, I guess, especially if they eat flies. But is that really super important? Not really. So, either this is a slant rhyme, right, where what's being rhymed is the L sound and not the vowel sound of the A, right, because small is a soft A, and then scale, hard A, but you still have the L sound that's being rhymed, right? Or the way we pronounce small today is not how Surrey pronounced small. Right? So it'd be smale. Could be how Surrey would have pronounced it. Maybe. Now, I agree. I don't think that we should be emphasizing small here. I don't think that line's super important. I don't think that's where he wants our attention. I think it is just another example. But that's a good question. Why is it this way? So I think as we're writing out our rhyme scheme, we could say that we can consider this line small to be rhyming with scale and bale, right? Another A. Okay. But you see how when we're doing interpretation of poems, we have to ask these questions, right? It becomes not more difficult, but it becomes more involved. And you can do that. You're allowed because you're doing interpretation. So we have some archaic vocabulary here in this one. With green hath clad the hill and eke the vale. What do you think eke means? Yeah, also, right? So the hills and the vales are green, right? It's springtime. Things are growing. The turtle to her make hath told her tale. That would be Mr. Turtle, right? Mrs. Turtle talking to Mr. Turtle. The heart. Should know this from Beowulf. Male or female deer?
Female.
Male,
Oh, wait, what?
right? The heart hath hung his old head on the pail. So what's happened? Yeah, shed his antlers, right? The buck in brake, that would be what? You might know this if you go to the state fair and look at all the animals. It's a male rabbit or male hare, a buck, right? Well, it can be. His winter coat he flings, right? So all of his winter fur, he sheds it. The fishes fleet with new repaired scale. So fleet, swimming around real fast. The adder, all her sloth away she slings. So snake doing what? Shedding her skin. The swift swallow pursueth the fly small. We get that one. The busy bee, her honey now she mings. She makes, yeah. Bees are making honey. Winter is worn, that was the flower's bale. So the thing that was bad for the flowers is over, right? It's spring and summer. Summer has come. Yay, happy. So all of these things, are they good or bad? Good. What's happening in all of them?
Good things.
Good things, summer things, growing things. It's full of life. Full of life and of love and of trees. Hey, great happening, illimitably earth. Yeah, full of beauty, right? Things are great. If you guys ever memorize that poem for me, come. Thank you, God, for this amazing day. Leaping greenly, spirits of trees in the blue tree. Okay. Sad. Maybe next year. You shouldn't. It's a good poem. And so all of these things, they should make you what? Happy. Yay. But what's the couplet at the end? And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays. So he's looking at all these pleasant things and the each care decays. So all of their cares are going away. Right? And yet what? Sorrow springs. He's still sad. Oh, bummer. Now, it is a sonnet, so why do you think he's sad? Because of a girl. It's always a girl. It's always a girl. Chicks, man. And so you have this interaction. Now, why do you think he spends all of this time, right, up to 13 and a half lines talking about how great it is? Why? Ryan, why does he spend 13 and a half lines talking about how great he is, and then he's like, but I'm still sad? Yeah, why? That's the question. Why? Like, what's the point? So he points all this stuff out, but he is still bummed, right? So why does he feel the need to tell us all this good stuff that's happening? Why doesn't he just tell us the bummer stuff? Right? Why doesn't he spend 14 lines talking about how sad he is because his girlfriend doesn't talk to him anymore, won't text him back? Really? You've never read a poem written by a guy who just got dumped? Because we're going to read some. Oh, really? When you're sad, do you ever listen to sad music?
That makes it worse.
That's the point.
It's cathartic. So what's going on here? Yeah, maybe he's like, look at all this happy stuff. I should really feel happy. Oh, but I'm still so sad. What else? Carter?
Because it's showing how everything should be going his way. Everything is new, everything is fresh, but he's still hung up over some girl.
Right. Right. So same thing is like, everything is good. Why am I not happy? Yeah, sadness is huge. That's how sad he is. He's so bummed. He is more bummed than you. Right? So it's a method of emphasis, right? It's called, the technical term is antithesis. So it's a souped up antithesis. Right? He presents good thing, good thing, good thing, good thing, good thing, good thing, bad thing. And it's to emphasize the bad thing. Right? At least in this context, right? It's using that contrast to emphasize the thing being contrasted. Right? You see that we'll see this a lot in who do we see this a lot in? John Donne does this a lot. Where using antithesis, it's a type of parallelism, but here it's ginormous. And so here's a question: where's the Volta? Or before the couplet.
Yeah.
Okay, traditionally that's where we could put it. But if we're thinking like thematically, where would we put the couplet? Or not the couplet, the Volta. You know what I mean. Okay, yeah. Where else could we put it? Jaylee? Where does it turn to being a super bummer? Not yet. So we could say, like, yes, technically the Volta would come here, right? And we have this and yet, right? It's contrast. Sad. Sad Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey. And really sad. He died when he was like 28. It's such a bummer.
Broken heart.
Maybe not a broken heart. I think
Nobody died of this.
he died in war, I think. Where he was executed. I don't remember. Oh no, he died in prison because he was imprisoned by Henry VIII. Because he remained Catholic.
He writes
After they left. Probably.
You're like, man, this prison sucks. Guy told me like 8 years. He needs to move on.
Let's use appropriate language for the class. Yes. Okay. Well, okay. Let's take a couple minute break. One boy at a time, one girl at a time. If you need to go to the bathroom, talk amongst yourselves for a couple minutes. You can come say hi to Alec. Oh, that is a grainy picture.
Alec.
Hey guys.
Yeah, you gotta put your mask.
Hello.
Yeah, you're too close for us. We're not 6 feet. Oh, be closer.
Better. Is that better?
Hi.
Hey guys.
Hi. I can't hear you.
I thought he said good night. I was like, good night.
Oh, you're different time zone?
Yeah, different time zone. School is different. Oh.
Yeah, actually. You have a different time zone over there.
I lost all my other ones.
You see the same moon that we do?
You went off.
Always dark.
Thanks. Tell him like, please, Alec. Oh, my
Paul George was like,
The last 3 games. No, I want to do it. Don't even. Paul George.
I really want to do it.
Man, I'm so playoffs.
I have discovered. Let's say A for work. They only put one for a.
He missed 2 free throws in a row.
no.
Pressure, I don't even know.
Because the H comes from
I don't know how you missed 2 free throws in a row.
Greek. So like say we have
I don't miss 2 free throws in a row.
word
I'm on NBA, bro.
Hagia. That is the rough breathing word.
No, that's the like the white button. I've been in that
Means
scenario. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 8th grade, 6th grade. I mean 7th grade. We're playing against Walmart. Right? We're playing against
but because
It was big enough
it's
for me, I was
consonant
scared.
sound,
Yes, first game we ever won.
proceed
They threw it to the end zone. That was 20 to 10.
Now it has fallen out of favor because the H sound has spring.
Picked it off and I started running.
But if you look at, especially in English, they speak in England, even speaking out loud, where we usually don't do it, they will. Yeah, their accent. The H is softer. So no, it's not a typo. Literally turned your back on him.
I'm sorry, Alec.
Jeez.
I'm not.
Actually, I need to stop recording and start.
Really? Did your hair get caught in your earrings last night? Did it?